Okay, so for the most part, I've always liked Samsung phones. They get a lot of things right, and they've come a long way over the years, haven't they? But I haven't really been interested in holding on to one to use as my main phone for years. Until now. Now, like I said, they got a lot of things right, but this year they've got even more right, like ditching that goddamn Bixby button that you kept pressing when you really meant to press the volume or power buttons, or the power and volume buttons being straight up swapped to the other side and finally placed low enough so you don't have to keep practicing your Stretch Armstrong impressions with your bloody thumb. Like, that's already 3 improvements, and I haven't even gotten to the display yet. Although I don't think a lot of people are going to consider losing the headphone jack an improvement, but personally I'm all about that Bluetooth life, so I don't really give a shit. Moving on, the fingerprint reader's been moved up a bit, which should make it a little more convenient and easier to unlock for everyone. It has for me. And it's still just as quick, but it's also still not as consistent as other phones. The display on the S20 is, in a sense, almost perfect for the tech that's available today, and there's a few reasons why I say that. The most obvious reason is the new 120Hz refresh rate option, and yeah, it's pretty sweet. Will you notice a difference coming from a phone with a 90Hz display? Yep, but the jump is pretty minimal unless you're playing games that support 120. Anyways, the display's touch response has also been increased to 240Hz from 60, which also adds to the snap and smoothness in a massive way. So for example, think of iPhones. They may only have a 60Hz refresh rate, but the scrolling has always been so responsive and just feels right. Well, that's because the iPhones are running with 120Hz touch response. The S20 has 240. So let that sink in for a moment. Now, there is a catch with the display resolution and refresh rates, at least for now. At full QHD plus resolution, you're limited to the 60Hz refresh rate, but if you want to taste your eyeballs and go for that 120Hz, you're gonna have to trade off that QHD plus reso for 1080p. Now, don't start punching babies and kicking kittens just yet. Because this is the S20, it's got the smallest display, if you want to call it that, at 6.2 inches, which means higher pixel density than the other two. Yeah. See where I'm going with this? At 563 pixels per inch, running 120Hz at 1080p is more than just okay. It looks super sharp, which in my opinion means very little to no real trade-off. Either way, it's OLED. It produces awesome colors and supports HDR10+, so it's been rad for watching content. The hole punch camera's been moved to the middle, which has actually been much less distraction, which surprised me because I didn't think it'd make much of a difference. And with 120Hz at 1080p, I have zero complaints about image quality. I was a little disappointed that the stereo speaker audio quality wasn't really improved this year. Like, I'm not saying it sounds bad, it's up there with the better sounding phones, but it's maybe just a little too crisp in the highs. Like, it's just not as rich and full sounding as the iPhone or Pixels. So performance, yeah, it's got it. A Snapdragon 865, 12 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of UFS 3.0 internal storage, paired with a 240Hz touch response display at 120Hz refresh rate, makes this thing feel like it's finishing your thoughts for you. And Samsung's One UI 2.1 is another nice update. I mean, it's pretty dang similar to version 2.0, but poking around, I'm seeing some interesting settings and tweaks here and there, but I'll cover all that stuff in my setup video. Okay, so we've talked about the display and its different refresh rates to resolutions, but how does that all affect battery performance? Well, it's basically just like we all thought. With the display set at 120Hz, even at 1080p, the battery drains much quicker. With my daily usage, I was seeing an average of 3.5 hours of screen on time from its 4,000 mAh battery. At 60Hz and QHD+, I got closer to 5 hours at 4 hours and 45 minutes. But even at 120Hz, with the included 25-watt fast charger, if you start to run low, you can top up real quick. Like before I started this video, I just charged from 0 to 100% in an hour and 15 minutes. All right, so let's talk cameras. Now, unlike the insane S20 Ultra, the standard S20 has a 12 megapixel wide angle camera, a 64 megapixel telephoto with up to 3 times optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. And well, Samsung said they reworked the cameras, and reworked cameras we got. This phone takes bangers. I've noticed a big improvement in contrast. Highlights are handled way better now, very few blown out or overexposed shots. Shadows are a lot deeper. Colors look much more natural this year without looking washed out. Sharpness and clarity is really well balanced with fewer and fewer shots looking over-processed, and shots from the 3 times telephoto look great, but when getting into Samsung's gimmicky hybrid zoom, 10 times is the absolute max I'd push it, and even then, I personally still think photos look like shit and probably would never use any. Low light shots are leaps better than before while maintaining and enhancing highlights and keeping noise to a minimum, with night mode doing an excellent job when needed, although I noticed it can sort of over-enhance the colors a bit. Portrait or live focus mode looks like it's had some software improvements because edge detection looks much better this year. But you really gotta be careful with that 10 megapixel selfie cam because in low light, there's just no point unless you want to look like a watercolor painting. So yeah, the cameras are a massive improvement. The battery life will get you through the day. Performance is faster than we know what to do with. The display is still like the best you can get, and the hardware design changes have made it a lot easier to hold and operate. I'm not really a big phone guy, I'm more of a medium phone guy, that's what she said. So if you're like me, you're gonna absolutely love this phone in every way. Full recommendations from me. So let me know what you think of the S20 this year. Is this the one you're gonna pick up or are you going straight for the Ultra? But I think that does it for this one. As always, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, maybe show me some love with that like button. Subscribe if you're new to my stuff, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram to see what I'm up to next. But thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Cheers.